So CNN finally did a town hall with Bernie Sanders, and one of the questions that was asked of Bernie Sanders has to do with his Medicare-For-All plan. I want to show you guys this video, and then we're going to talk about the framing of the question and Bernie Sanders' response. Let's take a look.
Our next question. Tara Ebersol, a former biology professor from Baltimore County, Maryland. Tara, go ahead.
Good evening. There's a lot of misinformation regarding your plan for universal health care. Would you please provide a brief overview of your plan and how it differs from that of other candidates?
Good.
Thank you.
The United States, shamefully, is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people. We've got 30 million people today without any health insurance. Many of you are underinsured with high deductibles and high copayments, and we pay the highest prices in the world by far for prescription drugs. So, issue number one, I believe that health care is a human right, not a privilege, and we've got to guarantee health care to all of our people as a right. Number two, if we're going to do that in a cost-effective way, if we're going to make sure that we are not spending huge amounts of money, and in fact, lower the amount of money we're spending. We're now spending almost twice as much per capita on healthcare as any other country. That is unsustainable. The estimates is that in the next 10 years, we're going to spend $50 trillion on healthcare. The only way to provide healthcare to all people in a cost-effective way is a Medicare-For-All single-payer program. All right? That's what I believe, and that's what I will fight for. Now, good news is, before I ran for president in 2016, that was considered to be a wild and crazy idea. Today, a significant majority of the people support that concept. Now, the drug companies don't. The insurance companies don't, because they make billions of dollars every single year off of our wasteful and dysfunctional healthcare system. So I'm going to fight as hard as I can. There's going to be a bill introduced in the House, I believe this week, over 100 co-sponsors. We're going to reintroduce a bill in the Senate, I believe 16 co-sponsors. We are making real progress.
Senator, let's talk a little bit about Medicare for All, because about half of Americans, as you know, they're insured by their employer plans. According to a recent Gallup poll, 70% of these people with private health insurance, their plans, they like their plans. They think their plans are good. Will these people be able to keep their health insurance plans, their private plans, through their employers if there is a Medicare for All program that you endorse?
What will change in their plans is the color of their card. So instead of having a Blue Cross Blue Shield card, instead of having a United Health Insurance card, they're going to have a Medicare card. That Medicare card will allow them to go to any doctor that they want. If they're going to the doctor, they're happy. Any hospital they want. But you know what else? They're not going to be paying any private insurance premiums. If they are seniors, we are going to expand Medicare benefits to cover dental care, which is not covered for seniors, hearing aids, and eyeglasses. There will be comprehensive health care. People can go to any doctor, dentist, or a hospital they want.
So if they like their health insurance plan, they won't be able to keep their health insurance plan?
Well, nobody, this business of liking your health insurance plan, which, by the way, employers change every single year. People like their doctors.
Yes,
they like the hospitals. They like the care they're getting. Our bill, in fact, right now, if you are in a particular program, you may not be able to go to the doctor that you want. Our program will allow you freedom of choice.
But if they wanted additional private health insurance beyond Medicare for All, would they be allowed to purchase that kind of health insurance?
If they want, our bill covers all health care needs, all. If people want cosmetic surgery, for example, yes, of course they can get private insurance. But our bill covers all comprehensive health care needs.
So, wow. So this is the second question that was asked of Bernie Sanders. And there's a lot to say about this question. So this question involves Medicare for All, Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All. Keep in mind, Bernie Sanders has suggested Medicare for All and sponsored bills that Medicare for All bills in the Senate countless times for decades now. He has been the first person really to promote universal health care. And so I want to go all the way back to the beginning of this video and talk about all the details about this question and the response. And Wolf Blizzard's stupid commentary and follow-up question. So they brought on this biology professor. She has a PhD in I looked it up. She's involved in a lot of politics and activism, it looked like. But keep in mind, the reason why they brought her on is because she could have this the title of biology professor. That was the only relevant part about her, not the fact that she was involved in the Democratic, like her county Democratic Party thing. She was the chair of or whatever. So that was kind of strange to me that they would frame her as the biology professor and not her actual current position title. Notice the framing of the question. The question wasn't, can you explain to us and remind us what your universal healthcare or Medicare-For-All plan is? Can you just remind us what that is and explain to us, like, what do you think about it? That wasn't the question. You notice the question was, what do you mean by universal healthcare, and how do you differ from the other candidates? What? What a weird... This is like an incredibly weird question, and let me explain as to why. I'm going to give you guys a bunch of analogies as to why that framing is so detrimental to Bernie Sanders, and in a way that absolutely shouldn't be. It's basically throwing dirt on him for no freaking reason. Let me explain why. Imagine you go to Black Sabbath, the first metal band. If you don't think that they're the first metal band, then don't subscribe to my channel. They were the first metal band, and imagine you go up to them and say, like, yeah, but how does your music differentiate yourself from everyone else? What do you mean? They were the first metal band. When they came out, their music was incredibly unique. Like, yes, now there are different metal bands or whatever, but you can't ask the original guy, hey, what's your opinion on, or how do you differentiate? How are you unique? Right? That's what you ask the new guys. Right? Like, look at the Shark Tank, for example. Whenever someone comes on, the question that you ask is, how do you differentiate yourself from this? Right? Like, you don't ask the original corporation that originally invented the big idea, how do you differentiate yourself from this nobody over here, this other politician who has no credibility, Amy Klobuchar, right? Like, you don't ask the original person, how do you differentiate yourself? Because they were differentiating themselves by being the first person. So, like, what they're trying to do is muddy the waters. What they're trying to say is, yeah, Bernie Sanders, Medicare-For-All, but yeah, everyone is for Medicare-For-All. I mean, kind of, but who are you going to trust more? The guy that's been running on universal healthcare this entire time, or all of the other candidates, which there aren't a lot, that are suggesting, yeah, healthcare for all, sure. Access to healthcare for all, sure. Right? Kamala Harris. She literally on her website has the quote, access to universal healthcare. Not universal healthcare, you have access to healthcare, which is, I mean, already red flags all over the place. But, like, notice they didn't ask this question to any other candidate. They've had town halls for everyone. Howard Schultz, who isn't even running, he's an independent. He's not even running for president yet. He hasn't even made a bid. They did a town hall for him. They didn't do a town hall for Bernie until he ran. And they haven't said anything about who Bernie Sanders is or anything on CNN's website for, like, I don't know how many months now. They're keeping him very, very hush-hush. But, like, they didn't ask all the other people who are suggesting Medicare for all, like, well, how do you differentiate yourself from Bernie Sanders? No, the question is, how does Bernie Sanders differentiate from all the other people who signed on to his plan? So from the get-go, what a terrible framing question. Like, that was obviously well crafted by CNN. That was not crafted by this biology professor. That was, shame on, I hate to say this, but shame on her for asking a poorly framed question. Nonetheless, Bernie Sanders gave a good response. Bernie Sanders gave his typical response of, this is why we have to have health care. We're the only developed nation that doesn't have it. 30 million people don't have health insurance. People are, going broke because they can't afford the premiums and the deductibles and the co-pays. Right now, universal health care has been shown to save money by taking away all your premiums and essentially increasing your taxes by a little bit, which, by the way, I disagree with Bernie Sanders on how he wants to implement universal health care, but just a little bit. I'll talk to you guys about that in a second here, but nonetheless, like his response was really good and typical of, this is why we need health care. And in his response, he embedded, how are we going to pay for it? Like, this is a mistake that Bernie Sanders kind of, and it's not his fault. He fell for this in 2016. CNN would always ask Bernie Sanders, how are you going to pay for that? They never ask other politicians that support Trump tax cuts, how are you going to afford these tax cuts? They're never going to ask, how are you going to afford this increase in military spending? They never ask those questions, but they'll ask Bernie Sanders, how are you going to fund universal health care, even though it saves money? And there are so many studies that suggest that show that, and no study that shows that it's going to cost a lot of money. So, yeah, Bernie Sanders gave a really good response to this. Bernie Sanders slipped in a couple things that were really interesting in this response. He mentioned, I don't know if you guys caught this, but he said, right now, universal health care is in the House and the Senate. There are 100 co-sponsors in the House and 16 co-sponsors in the Senate. Now, I want you to ask yourself this really important question. Why would he say that? And I'll tell you why. I'll give you why I think my opinion as to why I think he said it. He said it because what he's trying to do is he's trying to say, listen, just because I'm running for president doesn't mean universal health care can't happen unless I'm president. I'm not threatening universal health care. I'm actually suggesting universal health care can pass today. And the best strategy to pass universal health care is to aggressively sponsor the bill in Congress. And he's actually absolutely right, because this is what the Republicans did when they tried to abolish Obamacare. When they tried to repeal and replace Obamacare. And I don't know if you guys remember this, when Obama, in his last 4 years, I think it was the Republicans would attempt to repeal and replace Obamacare in the House an average of 1 or 2 times a month. And so the whole framing of repeal and replace Obamacare, that sort of lingo was embedded into mainstream media. And now you know what I mean when I say repeal and replace Obamacare. If I frame it as get rid of Obamacare, you're like, that's not the saying. The saying is repeal and replace Obamacare. The reason for that is because that bill to repeal and replace Obamacare was aggressively passed in the House some like 500 times or something like that. It was maybe not that many times, but I think it was almost 100. It was just an unreasonable amount of times. And it gained popularity, even though the concept is unpopular. The concept of getting rid of the individual things within Obamacare, they're all unpopular. But a concept of repealing and replacing Obamacare was actually popular at the time because it got so much media coverage. They were consistently trying to pass this bill. And so Bernie Sanders is saying, listen, we're trying right now. We're not waiting until 2020. We're waiting until right now. So we're going to go straight for universal health care, even with Trump as president. And that's great because, honestly, it is a litmus test. You should look as to whether or not your Democratic candidates that represent you are co-sponsoring those bills. Because if they are not, then you cannot vote for them in the primary. That's absolutely crucial. So that was really interesting. Now, Wolf asked a follow-up question to this question from the biology professor. He starts with this premise. Listen, 70% of employees think their plans are good. Will they get to keep their health insurance plans through their employer? Okay. A lot of things to talk about with this question. First off, I honestly think that this is the best that they could do when it comes to trying to smear Bernie Sanders. So the framing was like, listen, it's popular that people want to keep their health insurance. No. The framing is in the merit of the question is in the framing. The importance of the question is in the framing of the question. So the framing was 70% of employees think their plans are good. Now, that is relative to the plans that currently exist. Right now, the US has absolutely crappy healthcare plans. We're the only developed nation that uses the word deductible or copay or premiums when it comes to health insurance. We're the only country that uses those terms. If you go to the UK, there are people who probably don't even know what a deductible is when it comes to healthcare. Like, healthcare deductible. What? What does that even mean? Right? Like, so to suggest that employees like their plans means that we should keep private health insurance. What a weird argument. Like, no, you don't see any Americans saying, I want to keep my plan. I want to keep my plan. You don't see any Americans flaunting their plan. I've never seen anyone say, this is such great health insurance. I love it. I love healthcare. Healthcare in the US is perfect. What a strange, and by the way, this was asked of all of the employees that have healthcare. 30 million people don't have healthcare. Did you ask them? Like, a lot of them are probably working, right? Like, you don't need to give health insurance to your employees unless you have more than 50 people. By the way, that was because of Obama. Trump tried to repeal that. Gosh, what a strange question. And notice the question used to be in like 2012, 2008. The question was, will you get to be able to keep your doctor? And Obama said, you will be able to keep your doctor, I promise, or whatever. And then obviously that wasn't the thing because Obama didn't actually pass universal health care. But notice, I want you to understand that when it came to 2008 and 2012, all the town halls for Obama, they were asking him, do you get to keep your doctor, right? And they'll talk about how that promise was not kept. That promise was not kept. But they never talk about the fact that Obama touted universal health care back in 2007, 2008 when he was running for president initially. They never talk about that promise. They only talk about the promise when it comes to, will you get to keep your doctor? Because the corporate media didn't want to flaunt universal health care, even though it was overwhelming. Well, it wasn't popular at the time, but it was gaining a lot of traction considering all the other developed nations were joining onto this kind of thing. Now, I want to talk about some aspects of Bernie Sanders' plan that, one more quick thing, actually about Wolf Blitzer and his response. Bernie Sanders mentioned employers change their health insurance each year. I can't even tell you what my current health insurance plan is because it does change every year. Literally every year, I get something else. It's like EMI health insurance or something like that. I don't know EMI. I've never been there. I don't know anything about my health insurance plan other than I have a deductible, I have a premium, I have a copay. And it's way better than not having health insurance. So if you ask me, do you like your health care? I mean, the framing of that question is poor because, I mean, in a one way, yes, I do like my health care because it's better than not having health care. But do I like how the healthcare system works? No. And an overwhelming majority of Americans think that universal healthcare is the best system. A majority of Republicans, 52% of Republicans, support it. 85% of Democrats, 70% of Americans. So, like, every single reason points to passing universal healthcare. And this is what Wolf Blitzer had to come up with. Are you going to be able to keep your health insurance? Wow, what a pain. What a pain to... do I get to keep my deductible? What does that even mean? Am I going to be able to keep my premiums? Do I get to keep... Because I want to keep giving them $500 a month. Can I please give them like $500 a month? I want to keep it. Can I please only pay 10%? I don't want to pay the 100%. I just want to pay... Or I don't want to pay 0%. I want to pay 10%. I like my plan. Wow. What an awkward question and a way of smearing Bernie Sanders. Okay, now, last but not least, Bernie Sanders mentioned people like their doctors. And right now, with your current healthcare plan, there are many doctors that you do not have access to. With universal healthcare, you have access to all doctors. Now, that being said, there are going to be doctors that quit because they're paid right now $600,000 a year, and now they're going to have to take a pay cut because government's going to come in and say, you're not going to be paid $600,000 a year. You're only going to be paid like $150,000. Oh, sorry. A lot of them stay, and every other developed nation, a lot of doctors stayed. A majority of the doctors stayed. An overwhelming majority of the doctors stayed, and they kept their job, even though they took a massive pay cut. It's still $150,000. What are you going to go work at McDonald's? You're going to make a lot more money there. That's such a weird, bizarre. I can't understand that. So yeah, people like their doctors. People don't like their healthcare. No one flaunts about their healthcare. They flaunt about their doctor. They say, I have a really good doctor. And every once in a while you'll hear, I have really good health insurance. But again, that's relative. That's relative to what's out there. 30 million people, 10% of Americans don't have healthcare. And so you can say to those 10%, yeah, I have good healthcare relative to you. But if you go to someone who's in Canada, if you say I have really good healthcare, they're going to laugh at you. They're going to say, what do you mean you have really good healthcare? What does that even mean? Like, why is there good and bad healthcare? There should just be good healthcare. And that healthcare should be, you get to go to whatever doctor you want, pay zero premiums, zero deductible, zero copay. Like, that's about as good as you can get. I can't imagine how you would ever want anything different. And then, like, Wolf Blitzer talks about like, what about other private insurance? And Bernie Sanders says, I mean, like, if you want cosmetic surgery, you can get private health insurance for that. And yeah, there is a private health insurance industry in other countries, other developed nations, including the UK, including Canada. A lot of European countries have private health insurance companies that pay for cosmetic surgery. And people get it. It's sure, but like, no one's thinking to themselves like, I'm not going to be able to get that laser hair removal for free. Or I'm not going to be able to get I can't think of things like I can't get lip surgery to make my lips look good. Cry me a river, right? Like, what a weird thing to be sad about. That's not an argument against that healthcare. Your current health insurance doesn't pay for that. So why is this even? I don't know. Anyways, let me talk about the logistics of Bernie Sanders' plan that is interesting to me. Bernie Sanders suggested that seniors are going to get access to vision, hearing, and dental. I don't like this, guys. This is something that I actually don't like. I want vision, hearing, and dental for all. Like, universal healthcare should cover vision, hearing, dental. I mean, it's not that much to ask for because, again, it's cheaper to do this way. It's cheaper if the government has the entire country as their pool for negotiating drug prices or dental prices or vision prices or hearing prices. I don't know why Bernie Sanders wants just for seniors vision, hearing, and dental. I think that should go all the way. And there's something that I think that we all need to talk about, and that's braces. I believe, and I want your guys' opinion on this. I believe that universal healthcare should also cover braces. Braces are considered cosmetic surgery, but to me, it is highly inconvenient to live a life with crooked teeth. Look at this. So, that's my thought. I want you guys' thoughts on Bernie Sanders' response. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share. Yeah. Thanks, guys.